the first thing we have to do is we have to give Temple and Coach Rule credit. Played extremely well. Thought they dominated up front on each side of the ball. Our offensive line had a hard time with their defensive line, obviously, and I thought their defensive line played well against. Their offensive line played well against our defensive line. Zone read gave us some problems. Obviously, the sacks are an issue. Did not punt the ball well, which put our defense in some tough spots. That's been a problem now for 2 years. We need to obviously get that resolved. Thought Joe Julius for a first game kicked well, kickoff as well as field goal. So got a lot of work to do. I don't need to tell you guys that. It's obvious to everybody. We got a lot of work to do. We'll practice tomorrow. We'll watch the film. Be very, very honest with ourselves, including myself. Look in the mirror. Be very critical. Look at areas that we need to fix. Look at areas that we need to get better at. We went in, as you guys know, we talked last week with green, yellows, and red. That changed. We lost Brandon Bell for the game. We lost Wooten for the game, so then we ended up having to burn red shirts of Cooper and Bowen. They went into the game. We weren't anticipating playing them, and we lost Naeem Wortman for the season. So that was a factor for us as well on the defensive side of the ball. So give Temple all the credit in the world. We have a lot of work to do. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. There's nobody that's going to be more motivated than we will. I know our fans, I know the alumni, I know everybody's really disappointed. There's nobody more disappointed than the men in that locker room right now. So open up the questions.
James, why was Christian Hackenberg out there with a 3-possession game in the last 2 minutes?
Well, I think it's a message. It's no different than calling timeouts at the end of the game when the game is sometimes decided. I think you keep playing. We've had that discussion on the sideline as coaches. Obviously we didn't think he was going to get sacked again with the plays that we were calling. That happened. Obviously looking back at it, you could question the decision. We'll look at it. We'll sit down and watch the film. We'll have a discussion if that was the right thing to do. I just know as coaches and as players, you don't ever want to feel like the game is over until the final whistle. So that was our approach.
James Naeem was injured, it appeared, on a punt coverage team. He was one of the few starters that was out there. Easy to second guess after the fact, but is that something that you really give a lot of thought to, getting your starters on those types of teams?
Yeah, I never really kind of understand that way of thinking. Everybody says offense, defense, and special teams, they're all important. You're going to play your best player. So we look at our starters, wanting them to start on one special team. We have some guys that start on 2 special teams. Again, you play your best players in all 3 phases. That's how we're always going to approach.
Up 10-0, what changed for them defensively, or what changed for you offensively after you got that 10-0 lead? What, if anything, changed on either side of the ball?
I'm gonna have to watch the film, but my gut tells you is we gave up our first sack, and from that point on, we continued to have some issues. That sack, I think, kind of changed things for us. But I'll have to watch the tape. We knew going into this game. It's one of the top defenses in the country last year. Got a lot of respect for their defensive coordinator. And they had 10 starters returning from one of the best defenses in the country. So we knew there was going to be some challenges there.
Defense was also without Grant Haley today. John Reed, what were your thoughts on him, kind of gut reaction to him, and do you anticipate Grant being ready down the road?
Yeah, we anticipate Grant being back next week. When he was not able to go this week, we thought that was in his and our best interest. So John Reed stepped into that spot. I'll have to watch the tape. I know you guys don't want to hear me say I got to watch the tape, but I did not hear John's name mentioned, and I did not see John have a whole lot of issues. I think, as a freshman, I thought he played pretty well, did some good things. Not having Grant Haley obviously was a factor for us. We think he's a special player.
Is this the type of game that you would maybe consider reshuffling your offensive line? Because I remember last year you had talked about, you were playing different guys, you weren't playing different positions and what have you. Or are you considering, after you maybe watch the film or something like that?
Yeah, literally our best 5 are playing. You know, the guys that are backing them up are redshirt freshmen that we don't feel at the time are ready. You know, we'll look at it. Obviously, there's going to be some adjustments that we're going to have to make. But we spent a lot of time all season discussing and working who are our best 5 to put on the field. You know, you don't want to hear it, but you know, the truth is we still have some challenges there. Obvious to everybody watching the game today. I felt like we would play better going into the game. Again, you got to give Temple credit. You got to give their defensive front credit.
How concerned are you with Hackenberg maybe kind of looking towards the rush instead of keeping his eyes downfield?
Well, yeah, we got to protect him. You know, we got to protect him. I think it starts with that. It's our job as coaches and as offensive players to protect him, and we got to be able to run the ball consistently as well. Guys, it's the same. You know, again, it's the same message as last year. We got to protect consistently. We got to be able to run the ball consistently.
I know you got to look at the tape, but to kind of know the specifics of it. But it did seem like maybe he had like the typical 3-4 seconds you would have, and then will get sacked. So it's hard to say with downfield coverage, but what were your impressions at this moment?
There was 1 or 2 times where they rushed 3 and dropped 8. You shouldn't have pressure on your quarterback when you're rushing 3 when you're having 6 or 7 man protection. So we got to get those things fixed.
Can you thought on Brandon Folt's first game and sort of what he was able to add to your offense early on?
Yeah, I thought Brandon. You know, we felt like that all summer long, that Brandon would bring some speed. You know, that we haven't had, and he was able to do that. You know, the plan was to get him the ball and get him some touches in space early on with the speed sweeps, and then use that as misdirection to be able to run the ball in between the tackles. You know, they stuck with their game plan and went man coverage. We still were able to get some yards off of it, but we're going to have to be able to run the ball in the box. The other thing they did is they played a lot of press man or press bail to take away the gimme throws and say you're going to have to run the ball in an overloaded box or beat us before we're able to get to your quarterback. You know, they're not going to play off coverage. They're going to play press, so you can't throw your timing routes. Now you got to win versus press coverage, and you got to be able to protect for a half second longer.
James, as the game went on, how did you feel like you guys did with regards to offensive adjustments?
Yeah, I think we came in at halftime and discussed what we were going to need to do. But again, it goes back to what we've talked about in the past. It comes down to protection and being able to run the ball. We're not able to do that right now. So we need to make those corrections. We're going to need to do a better job of it. There's not a whole lot of plays in the playbook when you can't consistently protect the run the ball. We need to get those things fixed from a technique and from a fundamental perspective.
James, we heard in preseason camp from you and others that the offensive line was better, getting better. How disappointed are you by the way they played today?
Yeah, I'm disappointed overall. With our offensive line, I think they have improved. It did not show today. I do think they've improved. I think, again, I think Temple is a good defense. I think Temple's pretty good up front. I think Temple's going to give some people problems this year. So, we're going to focus on the things that we can control, and that's us and our locker room and our practices. But we got some work to do.
Coach, did you say that Brandon Bell is also week to week? Do you expect him back anytime soon?
Yeah, we expect him back.
I don't know how to say this diplomatically, so I'm just going to say I think the perception is out there that you're a really good recruiter, a really good motivator, maybe not such a good offensive strategist, offensive back. If someone said that to you, what would you say, a fan? We're talking about fans being disappointed. They're saying that a lot.
Yeah, I would be disappointed as well. When you play the way we played today, I would be disappointed. And people can question. It's our job to silence the questions. It's our job to get out in the field and produce and play well. And that's our responsibility. So there's going to be criticism. I get that. But I am as committed, as determined today as I've been since the day I got the job. And it's our job to silence the critics. So,
what positive do you keep from the game?
I'm sorry.
What positive things do you keep from the game?
I'm sorry.
What positive?
Positive. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I apologize. Again, I'm going to have to watch tape. We played a bunch of young kids. There's some positives, I guess, that comes from that. We played a bunch of young players, probably a little bit more than we anticipated playing. I'm going to have to watch tape. It's hard to say, right now a whole lot of positives come out of the game. I got some notes written down. 7 first-time starters played. Bell's second career forced fumble, Brown's first career fumble recovery, Williams with a career high 6 tackles, Nassib with a career high 10 tackles. You know, so I guess those are the positives. But it's hard after that game to come in here and talk about a whole lot of positives. We got work to do, guys. You know, I'm just as disappointed as everybody that watched the game. Again, so are our players. And I'm not going to come in here to be defensive or make excuses. We got to get it done.
Do you think you
Time
dropped
for 2
your
more.
guard when you guys went up 10-0? Did that come too easily at all?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't get that feeling. I've been around teams where you score early and you feel like there was a letdown. I didn't feel like that was the case. I didn't feel like that was the case. And I'll have to talk to the rest of the coaches on the sideline, get their feel, and watch the tape. And I know that's not an answer you guys want to hear. Watch the tape, but I didn't get that feeling during the game.
James, are you concerned with the team's morale, and especially Christian's morale after getting sacked 10 times?
Sir?
Are you concerned with the team's morale, and especially Christian's morale?
Yeah, I think you're always concerned after a loss about morale, and you're always concerned about a certain position or a certain group when they don't play well, about morale and about confidence. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And we work really hard at those things. The best way to handle those things is to have honest conversations. Watch the film, talk about the things that we need to improve on, how we're practicing. That conversation will go both ways. But yeah, I think whenever you have a tough loss, there's an issue with morale, and you got to discuss those things.
Thank you.
Kevin, do anything?